Hey YouTube, so it's been about a week since I made my last video. I'm just coming off of work, which is why I'm in green pajamas. And yeah, today I'm going to talk about real estate investing. Now, for the purposes of this video, I'm just going to focus solely on owning physical properties and house hacking, rental hacking, and like all of those things. And I'm not going to talk about REITs or real estate crowdfunding. I'm not a financial advisor and I don't want to advise you on things that I don't really know too much about. I'm really open to continuous growth in learning all of this stuff, but for now, we're just going to take that out of the equation. But one thing that I realized when we talk about financial independence and the journey that we have to take is that inevitably, one of the topics that comes up is house hacking or rental hacking, which is basically the practice in which you have other people living in your property, whether that's a multifamily home with several units, or whether it's just a couple rooms in the same house, in which you have your renters actually pay for your living expenses, and therefore you live rent and mortgage free. Now, in theory, this works really well. However, life is not just an algorithm and things happen. So this video is going to be talking about that. So before I begin my discussion, I just want to have a quick shout out to Nick Skyhoyt. He is a YouTuber who's also a financial independence enthusiast, and this video is actually inspired by his last video on house hacking. So link to his channel down below in the description. So definitely check him out. Oh, and also quick updates on my life. I made my first mortgage payment. 3-month emergency fund at 33%. I opened up a high yield savings account, increased my 401k contributions by 12%, optimized my spending cash back by getting really good cash back credit cards. And finally, I'm in the process of switching phone carriers so that I could save more money. All right, so without further ado, here is my opinion on house hacking and rental hacking. So we see a bunch of successful YouTubers like Graham Stefan or Meet Kevin, or people who smash the like button and subscribe for the YouTube algorithm. But for real, we really look at other people's successes, and sometimes I think that people forget about what it actually takes to get to that level, and more importantly, the risks that people take in order to get to that level. And I think that this actually perpetuates the notion that real estate is a really easy way to make passive income. It's not as passive as you think. First off, if you live in a high cost of living area, it is really hard to save for a down payment on a house. Even if you do an FHA loan and you pay like 3 to 8% of the down payment, you incur a lot of risk, and it's a lot of expenses, especially if you get a fixer-upper. And you have to build up your credit so that banks actually lend to you. And when you buy your first property, you have to go through the closing process. And a lot of people who haven't bought a property before don't exactly know what that entails. You have to put down an initial deposit, and if the closing doesn't go through, you lose that initial deposit. You have to get the place inspected, and if the inspector misses something and you close on the place, and all of a sudden you have water damage and termite damage that no one noticed, that's going to be a lot more expenses. And I do think that a lot of people make a very novice mistake like I did and get very overzealous with buying their first property and deplete all of their funds, including their emergency funds, in order to get their first property. And I don't think it's necessarily a misconception per se, but rather like these grandiose ideas that I could just rent out all of these rooms and they can all pay me and I'm going to be swimming in passive income, when in actuality, it's a lot more involved and a lot harder than that. It won't be like HGTV where you pick 3 fixer-uppers and you manage to somehow fully rental all of them in like 2 weeks, and then you call upon the real estate gods and tenants come raining down from the sky and all of the passive income just rises from the depths of hell. Honestly, you need to do a thorough background check and credit check on people before you let them live in your property. Because let's say that you have 4 units, right? And you rent out 3 of them and live in the 4th one. It takes one bad tenant to completely derail you from making any future prospects that you make. And before you even purchase your first property, you have to make sure that you buy that property well below market value, because you can lose a lot of the profits that you end up making from real estate just right in the beginning. Right in the beginning if you overpay by a few $1,000s. You also incur a lot of risk if you have a vacancy in your rental property. And you incur additional risk if your tenants end up trashing your place or your tenants stop paying your mortgage. It costs thousands of dollars pay for all of the legal fees and the lawyer in order to evict a bad tenant who decided to stop paying. And all of a sudden, you are 3 months behind on your mortgage payments. It happens. Or let's say you buy a property and then you rent out to people you know, like friends. To me, it's almost like the equivalent of co-signing on a loan for your friend, right? If your friend messes up, it messes you up financially. Friendships can be ruined when there's financial stress involved. There are laws that protect tenants, even if they just decide to stop paying for your mortgage, especially in tenant-favored states. And you can actually get persecuted if you take the initiative to kick out tenants on your own without going through the proper legal process. So yes, house hacking can be a great way to save money and make a lot of money, but there's a lot of risks that you take when you decide to do that. And it might not be for everyone. Even with rent hacking, which is the practice in which you rent from a landlord and then that landlord lets you sublet to another person and then you make money off that other person, there's a lot of risks with that too, because if that person ruins the property that you're renting, you are liable for it because it's your name on the lease. So if you really want to get into house hacking and don't want to deal with all of the horror stories, there are other scenarios in which you can achieve low cost of living or even free cost of living. Like if you are a student and you decide to be an RA, that is living rent and mortgage free. If you are not a student and you're an apartment manager, you can also live rent and mortgage free. But what you don't want to do is rent out your basement on Craigslist, hope that someone's not a serial killer, and they happen to not be a serial killer, and then they pay you $800 a month, and in the meantime you were saving frantically in the event of a vacancy in your property, and then you hope that the next tenant is also not a serial killer. There are a lot of risks involved. You can lose a lot of money, your credit score can go down, it's going to make it that much harder to buy things in the future if that happens. Real estate can be a very lucrative investment, but it's also a risky investment, like with many other things. Does that mean you shouldn't invest in real estate? No. But it does mean that you need to be able to weigh the risks and benefits and be able to properly prepare yourself for those risks if you decide to go down that path. And it's okay if owning physical real estate is not for you, because there's other alternatives. Like I said in the beginning of my video, you could consider REITs or real estate crowdfunding. And it's also okay if real estate is not for you at this moment, but it's something that you can work towards in the future after a thorough background check and credit check of your tenants, of course. Okay guys, thank you so much for attending my TED Talk, and again, shout out to Nick Sky Hoyt, who inspired me to do this video. Please check out his channel in the link down below. Stay tuned to keep up with my financial journey, and until next time, peace.